sent them a letter to remind them and encourage them to be here. And I talked to at least a couple of them in the past week, at least one today, and they didn't make it. But I'm glad y'all are here tonight. This is more people than I usually get to preach out on Wednesday nights. So. But we're going to talk. I wanted to talk tonight in terms of Thanksgiving. But I also wanted us to think about Christmas because it's that time of year. You have less than a month to get your shopping done for Christmas. If you're not ready in a month, you'll miss it. And so it's that time. I mean, there's been Christmas trees in Walmart for a month at this point. So it's time to think about Christmas. And so I want you to think about, well, Ebenezer Scrooge. Because tonight we're going to talk about Ebenezer. And first we want to think about Ebenezer and the fact of how he is when we first meet Ebenezer. Now, how many of you all, I need to show hands on this, how many of you all have seen at least some form of a movie based on a Christmas Carol or have read it? All right, if you show hands, you've either read it or you've seen it. Okay? All right. So we know Ebenezer Scrooge, when we meet him, he's a hard-fisted, nose to the grindstone. He's grumpy. In fact, when Charles Dickens describes Ebenezer Scrooge, he says even the blind man's dogs cross the street as if to drag their masters away and saying, no eye is better than an evil eye, and trying to protect the blind folks in passing from him. And the reason, if you get to reading the story, you see that Ebenezer is not grateful for anything. He has all of the advantages in life. He is in the upper class. He has wealth. He has made something of himself. And yet, he doesn't appreciate a bit of it. He readily claims profits and takes benefits from everything. He has a large home. And yet not a bit of it is something that he is grateful or appreciative for. And instead he's grumpy and tired and bitter. And folks, we are going to encounter some people who are Ebenezer in the coming month. You may encounter some Ebenezers like that tomorrow at Thanksgiving dinner. You may encounter some Ebenezers like that at your next Thanksgiving dinner the day after, or at the one the day after. You will probably, if you get out and try to fight through the shopping crowds on Friday morning, encounter a few other Ebenezers like that. I found out the store that I'm most interested in doesn't even open till 10, so I get to sleep late. Not exactly. We have to go someplace. But you may encounter some Ebenezers. You may even encounter an Ebenezer from time to time when you look in the mirror across the next few days as you start to say, oh, Thanksgiving. Bah, humbug. I have no interest in such things. It's just there's so much. What is Thanksgiving but a chance to find yourself another year older, another pound heavier, and not a bit wealthier? It's very easy to become Ebenezers ourselves. But I think that I would challenge you to not stop at being Ebenezer. You see, Ebenezer Scrooge had a singular misfortune that we don't have, and that is he was British. Now, this is not to take anything away from our cousins across the sea that claim to speak the same language we do, but don't have it quite right. But something that they don't have in England that we celebrate here in America is actually this holiday that we have tomorrow. They don't have a national day of Thanksgiving. Our neighbors to the north in Canada have a day of Thanksgiving. They had it 6 weeks ago before everything froze up. Canadian Thanksgiving is actually the same day that we call Columbus Day. That's when they actually observe a national day of Thanksgiving in Canada. Is the second Monday of October. And y'all are farmers enough to understand why. You can't harvest too much in Canada after you get past about the middle of October. But England doesn't have a day of Thanksgiving, and so Ebenezer Scrooge continues to be grouchy because he's never stopped and confronted and reminded of all that he has to be thankful for until that fateful night that the story remembers. He's never pointed to something that we need to notice, and that is that there comes a time that we need to go from being the Ebenezer Scrooge of ingratitude to being the Ebenezer of thanksgiving. Now, if you've got your Bible and you want to flip there real quick, take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 7, and I'm going to set you the story of what's going on here. In 1 Samuel, the people of Israel are a mostly united country. That is, they haven't split into the two countries that they are later on in the books of the Kings. But they're more like a loose confederation of 12 tribes that all worship in the same place, generally, at the same tabernacle, and share the same religion, but they don't really have a strong central government. And in fact, what bit of a central government they had fallen apart in the earlier parts of 1 Samuel. In battle with the Philistines, they had fought and they had lost. They had taken the Ark of the Covenant into battle, thinking that if they took God's box with them, that God would be obligated to help them. And they lost in battle, and the Philistines took the Ark. That's chapter 5. In chapter 6, we discover something amazing. God does not need an army. The very presence of God rested upon the ark, and it destroyed the Philistines such that they loaded it on a cart and sent it back. This thing is covered with gold inside and out. And yet the Philistines send it back. They don't want anything to do with it anymore. 1 Samuel chapter 7 begins with the story of Samuel organizing the people and saying, let's deal with these Philistines and fight them and drive them back. He says, but if we're going to do this, the first thing that we have to do is be repentant for the way we have been. As we come to Thanksgiving, one of the things that we need to do if we're going to move from being Ebenezer Scrooge and seek gratitude is to be repentant for the way we have been. Be repentant for the blessings that we've overlooked. Be repentant for the attitudes that we have carried that have been dissatisfied with what God has blessed us with. If you've got Facebook, I'm sure you've seen it make the rounds several times with the commentary that if Black Friday is the day in America that we beat each other up over deals after spending the day before being grateful for what we have. We need to stop and think about that because there's some truth to it. I'm thankful for everything I've got, except now I want more. We need to be repentant of that attitude. Well, I want more. I want this. I want that. We need to be cautious of that because we'll face that temptation tomorrow. Because I will tell you this, I want to watch that football game. I want a piece of that pie and a piece of that pie, even though it may make me sick to eat them both. I want this and I want that. I want to sleep late. I want to stay up late. I want to do what I want to do. I want. Sometimes we'll even bathe that I want in this complex that makes it sound like we're trying to help everybody else. I just want everybody to have a perfect Thanksgiving. I can't sit down for 12 hours while I rush around and do everything for everybody because I want everybody else to be happy. Down in, we can't let go of being the person who has to be the center of everything. So that at the end of the day, we get what we want, and that is for everybody to look at us and say, oh, it would never have happened without you. You're the key to this whole thing. So that we can bask in that glow and bask in the fact that, well, I gave up being able to sit down and do anything while everybody else got to relax. And I have said it before, and I will say it again. Got that? I'd edit that off the tape. If your family gathering is spoiled because you only have one kind of potatoes instead of 4, but because you have one kind of potatoes and had the time to sit on the couch and talk to your kids, play with your grandchildren, sit and visit with your cousin, talk to your sister. Maybe you can actually sit there and have a moment with your husband or your wife. And folks, your family gathering is out of joint. It's not about the potatoes. It never should be. Far better to have turkey lunch meat on white loaf bread that you picked up at Walmart in preparation for this week's ice storm that never happened. And as the Proverbs say, a quiet morsel with peace than feasting and strife. Far better. But be grateful. Scrooge never really sees that opportunity. He doesn't experience that. But we have that opportunity tomorrow. As we take a moment as a nation and pull the plug on everything else and stop to be thankful. Grateful for what we have. The freedom to stand around and complain about other people. The freedom to complain about the government. The freedom to praise the government. The freedom to complain about the preacher. I've spent the last 8 weeks studying the history of Christianity from 600 AD to 1600 AD. And let me tell you something, folks. Out of that 1,000 years, there's only 100 of them that you have the freedom to complain about your preacher. The rest of the time, you know what complaining about your preacher was considered? Treason. You could go to prison for it. Folks, y'all have the freedom to spend all day complaining about me tomorrow. Now, I will tell you something. Don't waste your day with that. Start your morning with about 30 hard minutes and then move on. But you have the freedom to do that. Be thankful for that. Be thankful that no longer do the authorities round up Baptists, tie them to a post, and drop them in the river to let them drown. One of the first recorded Baptists, actually it was what was called an Anabaptist at the time, in the 1500s, about 1526, was a guy named Balthasar Hubmaier, and he and his wife were arrested and drowned for being Baptists. That was how they were convicted. That was how they were treated by their government. We have the freedom not to have that happen to us. If you drown tomorrow, it won't be because you're a Baptist. It would be because you're swimming on a really bad day for it. Stop and be thankful for the things that we have, the blessings that we have. Examine that. Be grateful. And look not at Ebenezer Scrooge and his grumpy, bah humbuggy self, but look at what Samuel does. They chase the Philistines out of the territory, and they chase them most of the way back to the coastlands of Philistia. And as they are succeeding in battle, Samuel takes and he sets up this big stone as a marker. And he calls it Ebenezer, which means biblically, in Hebrew, it means until here the Lord has been our help. Or here the Lord helped us. Or several other ways that you can translate that. We could spend all night on it. Just like in that first hymn we sung, hitherto the Lord has helped us. Samuel said, we've gotten this far. You see, Ebenezer Scrooge, I think, is tired and grumpy and ungrateful because he has no idea what his name means. He has no idea down in his heart that even his very name was meant to remind him that up until that point, God had helped him, provided for him, met his needs, allowed him the freedom and the ability to walk this earth. And we need to realize that up till this point, up until this very day, the Lord has helped you. Now, you may have been through difficult times. I know you. Some of you have been through very difficult times. Some of you have felt like you have walked alone, struggled alone, striven alone, dealt with all sorts of difficulties, but the Lord has been there with you the whole time. and remains with you to this day. And so as we celebrate Thanksgiving, we can celebrate Ebenezer, that the Lord has brought us this far. Now the world for the Israelites changes after Ebenezer. Samuel soon draws near to the end of his life. They move on and select a king. Samuel gives them a great deal of warning about the king. It includes such things as warning, if you take a king to attack, your taxes will go up. You'll have all sorts of other problems. It's very interesting that, you have the problems related to having more government. More government costs more money. The world changes. But the Lord continues to help the people of Israel. For some time, He helps them through the king, then He helps them through others besides the king, and then through the king again, and then on and on. And for us, from this point forward, your world may change. And in fact, it should. Because as we move from dealing with the Ebenezers of our life that are grumpy, that are the Scroogey Ebenezers, stop and take a look at that stone of remembrance that reminds us that God has helped us this far, and we realize something. The stone that marks how far the Lord has helped us is a stone that rolled away from an empty tomb. And it's not the same rock, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to tell you that the same rock got moved from one place to the other. It'd make for a neat part in a movie, but that's not what we have in Scripture. But the great stone of help that God has given us is that stone that the angel rolled away from the empty tomb to show us that Jesus is risen. That He is risen indeed. Because Thanksgiving helps us prepare for Christmas, and Christmas and Easter go so well together. Because we're reminded that we've been helped not by a God who is distant, not by a God who honors and listens and respects our sacrifices, not by a God who requires our offerings lest He will not, otherwise He won't even look at us, but instead we've been helped this far by a God who poured out His grace and His mercy on us because He poured out His wrath on Jesus at the cross. And because at the empty tomb, Jesus showed that death has no power over Him. And so we respond with sacrifice, with offering, and with obedience, not out of the obligation that comes from hoping to gain God's approval, but from the celebration that our relationship with Him is secure. And so we get to move from Ebenezer Scrooge, that grumpy, ungrateful sourpuss, past the Ebenezer that is our stone of remembrance, to the Ebenezer that's that joyful guy at the end of the movie. The Ebenezer of Christmas morning. And as we turn through this weekend and turn towards Christmas morning, as we celebrate the incarnation of God, that God put on flesh and dwelt among us, and we get to greet that with joy in our hearts. Grateful for what we have, grateful for the opportunities we have to serve and to help others. Grateful that we can become the kind of people that not only know how to keep Christmas, but how to keep Thanksgiving. And to become as good a friend, as good a person, as good a believer as the good old city has ever known. So as we move through Thanksgiving, as we move through Ebenezers, as we encounter different Ebenezers along the way, realize where some people are. Some people are back there stuck in Scrooge mode. But notice that Scrooge isn't changed by the people who come around to berate him. Scrooge is changed by seeing the joy that he misses. If you're not familiar with Dickens' tale very well, Scrooge is moved by the ghost of Christmas past. But his behavior has changed when he sees through the ghost of Christmas present. that he's missed out on the whole point and he's missed out on the joy. Jesus told his disciples in John chapter 15, he said, "They will know you are my disciples for the love you have for one another." Throughout Scripture, we see that one of the hallmarks of those who trust in God is joy. And as you sit around the Thanksgiving table tomorrow, and Friday, and Saturday, and the leftover table on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I will tell you that you could sit there with a printed out outline of a discussion guide of how you want to get everybody to talk about what you want them to talk about. But that you'll be much more effective if you show up with joy in your heart and radiate the love of Christ for your fellow people. Share it by who you are. And let them see what they're missing. And then, prayerfully, commit yourself to live out in front of those folks. Not just at Thanksgiving, but all through the year, the joy of Christ. To pray that they see it as well. Because it takes a work of God to change a heart. It took the work of God to help the Israelites. It took the work of God to save our souls. Let's pray that He works in others as we show our thanksgiving tomorrow. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for your love, your grace, and your mercy. We ask you, Lord, to help us to be grateful people tomorrow, to carry joy to all that we know. It's in Jesus' name we pray.